Hello everyone, welcome back to my 3A character discussion. If you're new here, this is actually the second episode of this series. If you want to see the first episode where we talk all about Seiya, you can click the link on the screen right now. Today, we're going to discuss suit number 2, Akashi Yuuna. 3A is full of high energy, excitable girls. But even among them, Yuuna still stands out as one of the most extroverted. She's on the basketball team, and she does kind of fit that stereotype of the athletic, sporty girl you see in fiction. Her energy level never hits zero. She's always at 100, and you can count on her to have the biggest expressions and over-the-top reactions. Yuna is definitely not one of the most important characters in the story. Not even close. But, I don't know, I kinda like her. I can't really explain why. I guess I just respect someone who can stay positive, regardless of what's happening around her. That's not to say you have to be happy all the time. Obviously, everyone feels sad or angry sometimes. But for Yuna, I think she just hasn't really had to deal with any extreme stressors in her life, other than the loss of her mother, which we'll get to. She's just a nice, well-adjusted teenage girl. Yuna is almost always seen with Maki. They're basically best friends, and she's usually the one to rope her into whatever shenanigans are currently going on. Like with the Labyrinth of Lips game in Kyoto. Granted, she does get caught almost immediately, but she was totally down to pillow fight with everyone. Now, I know that doesn't sound super impressive, but in 3A, a pillow fight is practically a duel to the death. Yuna really starts to become prominent in the school festival arc. She participates in the Wizards vs. Alien event on the last day, and does really well. She gets 4th place. Keep in mind that there were hundreds of students playing. Even more impressive, she made it all the way to the end. In case you forgot, all the enemies in the event were equipped with 2 main weapons. The first were stripping beams. They destroy your clothes, and once you're naked, you have to leave the battlefield. You can get redressed, pick up some new equipment, and come back, but you will take a huge hit to your score. Halfway through the battle, they switch to the second weapon, time displacement bullets. These are essentially one-hit KOs. If you get hit by it, you will be immediately time jumped 3 hours into the future, at which point the game is already over. GG, thanks for playing. We know for a fact that Yuna didn't get hit by a single one of these bullets, because we literally see her defending the last spot in the plaza at the very end. And she couldn't have been taken out off screen afterwards, because she's still around when the defeated players start reappearing. If she had been taken out, she would have appeared after them, because they come back in the order they were shot. So for the entire second half of the battle, she didn't get hit once. But she probably got taken out by the stripping bullets beforehand, right? Nope. Take a look at her outfit. It's pretty clearly the same one she started with. And it's even relatively intact. Yeah, the skirt is shredded, and she's missing a sleeve, but that's about it. The boots, stockings, and corset are all totally fine. She even somehow managed to hang on to the hat. The hat! I don't see a chin strap on there. How did she manage to not lose that giant impractical hat in an event like this? The stripping lasers also seem to take out almost all your clothes in one shot, so the few hits she did take probably only grazed her. TLDR, Yuna's kind of a badass. And she knows it too. She's so happy with herself, she nicknames herself the Kid, because she uses 2 pistols, and I guess she's a really big fan of Billy the Kid. At least, if her apron's anything to go by. Let's talk about her dad for a second. Yuna's dad is actually a magic teacher at Mahora, which is really interesting, because Yuna herself is not a mage. And mages are obviously supposed to keep magic a secret from the public, but they can tell they're kids. Neji's parents were mages, and he was raised as a mage. Same with Anya, and probably everyone else in their village. But for some reason, Yuna still grew up completely ignorant of magic, even though both of her parents were mages. Why is that? Well, it's never explained, but the only reason I can think of is that Professor Akashi chose not to. Probably because of the death of his wife. It could be that he didn't want her to die on the line of duty like her mother did. Or maybe it was just that she reminded him too much of her. She looks and acts very similar, so if she learned magic like she did, it might have been too painful for him. But that's all speculation. For all I know, he and his wife could have decided from day one that they wanted their child to live a normal life, so maybe they were never going to tell her regardless. But speaking of that, her mother is dead. She passed away when Yuuna was 5 years old. I figured she must not have remembered her very well, because like I said, she's very happy and well adjusted. It's not like she's all sad and brooding over the death of her mother. But we know that's not the case. She still dreams about her, and even keeps a picture of them by her bedside, so she definitely remembers her. Her mother's name is Yuka, and from what we see, she seems like a grown-up Yuna. She's every bit as cheerful and energetic as her daughter is. In fact, Yuka was the one who tells her to always stay in high spirits. I think that's why she's always so happy, despite losing her mother at such a young age. You could even say her positive attitude is her way of honoring her mother's memory. In the beginning of summer vacation, we got some insight into Yuna's personal life. She goes to visit her dad, who lives off campus, and they actually have a really great relationship, which is really refreshing. In most stories with a single dad, he usually has a strained relationship with his daughter, or has trouble connecting with her or dealing with the death of his wife. But Yuna and her dad get along great. Professor Akashi is kind of a stereotypical bachelor. He lives alone, he can't cook, he's sloppy, and he doesn't even bother to shave if he isn't going anywhere. So when Yuna comes by, she cooks him some real food, tells him to get shaved, and so on. Because as she puts it, Dad really is no good at all without me around. Yuna is a massive daddy's girl. So there's this running gag where she keeps saying that she wants to marry her dad when she grows up. Yeah, okay, before you say anything, I think this is supposed to be a cultural thing. In Japan, it's a little bit more common for girls to say things like, when I grow up, I want to marry daddy. It's supposed to be cute, but they usually grow out of this in elementary school. The issue is that Yuna is a teenager and still says things like that, as many characters point out. But I think that's the joke. She doesn't really want to marry her dad. She's just trying to be cute. I hope. I think this is just her way of saying that she doesn't want to share her dad with anyone. Because when she sees him meeting up with a beautiful young woman, she gets extremely jealous and possessive. She even calls it cheating, even though her dad is single. Even after her friends point this out to her, she still insists he's cheating. So in her mind, even though her mother is dead, as far as she's concerned, they're still married, and he still needs to stay faithful. Of course, she gets over this. They go on a father-daughter date, and at the end of it, she gives her blessing, and tells him to go marry the blonde chick. But of course, this whole thing turns out to be one giant misunderstanding. The blonde woman, Donette McGinnis, was a friend of both of her parents, and is actually the one that introduced them. She's an agent of Megalomacembria, just like her parents were, and she was meeting him to talk about business, so she had nothing to worry about. At the end, Professor Akashi tells Yuna that he still loves her mother, even now, and she tells him that it's okay if he does want to get remarried someday, and it's super sweet and wholesome. After Neji forms Ala Alba, they each get a white wing pin to represent their membership. Then Eva decides to troll them. By this point, it had become pretty clear to everyone that Neji and the others were hiding something from the rest of the class. So Eva tells them that if they take a pin from one of the members, they can join the group and go with them to Wales, and by extension, the magic world. Normally, I wouldn't consider this important enough to mention, but then I remembered that she uses the guns from the school festival. Granted, we don't know how they work. They definitely don't require any magical skill or knowledge. Anyone can use them. You literally just have to point and say, strike the enemy. But wouldn't it be interesting if they required some small amount of energy from the user? I mean, probably not. They most likely have their own store of energy inside them, cause non-mages can use them just fine. But remember, that was the third day of the festival, when the World Tree's magic power is at its strongest. So you could argue that that's what was powering the weapon. And if that's true, then it's really impressive that Yuna was able to use them even after the festival with no problem. even though she has no magic training. This could be some subtle foreshadowing of her innate magical potential. Remember, magical ability runs in families, and both of her parents were mages, so it's not that far-fetched. Moving on to the Magic World arc, Yuuna is actually not part of Alba when they go to the Magic World, so she doesn't go with the rest of the group. She does still get there though. They already suspected that Neji and the others were going to ditch them and run off by themselves, so Yuuna and a few other girls sneak out and follow them to the gate port, even though they were warned many times that it would be dangerous and they should definitely not follow them. She either didn't believe them or thought it would be fun, so she went anyway. And it works out surprisingly well for her. Seriously, Ako contracts a fatal disease and nearly dies, then she, Akira, and Natsumi have to sell themselves into slavery to save her. The rest of Alba get framed for terrorism and have to fight against the evil organization, and Yuuna has to work as a waitress for a couple of months. When fate scatters everyone across the magic world, she and Maki get sent to a town called Tempa Terra, or at least somewhere close to it, because that's where we catch up with them. They're working at a local shop until they can earn enough money to get back home. I'm not trying to diminish the work that waiters and waitresses do. Trust me, I know, the service industry can be insanely brutal. But it's so mundane. They get transported into a fantasy world, but their lives aren't in danger and they don't have to fight anyone. They just have to do a normal summer job. Although, according to Johnny, one of the customers, he did save her when she was on the verge of death, so it's not like they haven't had any struggles since coming to this world. They could have landed in the middle of the desert with no food or water or money, and would have had to rely on the kindness of strangers. So, yeah, that would have been pretty bad. But within a week, they already have a place to stay, a job, and friends that are willing to help them. All things considered, they're not doing too bad. Granted, they are still trapped in a world that's completely alien to them, with no way home. And then the customers at the shop tell them that the gate port was destroyed, so they can't get back even if they earn the money. Which would have been pretty devastating, but 2 minutes later, Neji shows up on TV and tells them he can take them back to the academy, so they have nothing to worry about. Even at the governor's ball, when things get very serious, Yuuna isn't a part of it. Her only goal in that mini-arc is to get a Pactia. That's it. It's only after the ball when things start to change. By this point, Neji is suffering heavily from the side effects of Magia Erebia, and it isn't pleasant. This is when the gravity of the situation really hits her. I think seeing him struggle like that really made her understand that all their lives were on the line. Then Takane finally drops the bomb and tells her about her parents. And to her credit, she isn't that surprised. She already knew, or at least suspected, because as she points out, her parents' friend Danette was Neji's contact in the magic world. I guess it's pretty obvious when you think about it that way, but considering all the chaos that went on at the gate port, it's a miracle she was able to notice that. She's actually a lot more perceptive than most people think. She also reveals that she's learned some basic magic. Not much, mind you, it's just a practice spell. But we've already established that even that takes months of training. I think it's implied that she just kind of picked it up through cultural osmosis from being in the magic world for so long. Like how if you go to a foreign country, you'll eventually start to pick up the language. But it could also be a hint at her latent magical talent. Or maybe, if she already put all this together, she went out of her way to learn, as a way to connect to her parents. Sakane explains that her parents were magic teachers, and 10 years ago, Mahora sent Yuko to Megalomacembria on a mission where she was killed in action. Apparently the mission was also related to the current story, which never really comes up. It's not like this gives them some sort of insight into Fate's plan or anything, but it does give Yuuna a more personal motivation to join the fight and avenge her mother. Speaking of which, she does eventually get that Pactia. She contracts with Neji, and they share a little bit of a moment. It's nothing romantic, but she asks about his dad, and they relate to each other about their dead parents. By the way, Yuko died 10 years ago, the same year that Nagi disappeared. And according to Takane, her mission was related to the same situation. So who knows? They could have even been working together. I mean, probably not, considering that she died in Megalomacembria in the magical world, and Nagi died in Istanbul on Earth. But hey, you never know. Anyway, her Pactio artifact is the Iris Tormentum, a pair of handguns that shoot magic bullets. There are supposedly 7 different types of bullets, but we only get to see 2. The first is a spirit transformation canceling bullet, which does exactly what you think it does. It stops a demi-human from transforming. She uses it on Homura to stop her from going into her fire spirit form. And presumably, it would have done the same thing to Tamaki, Shirabi, Kotaro, or even Neji in his transformation. The next is a magic suppression bullet that prevents the target from using any magic at all for a full 3 minutes, which is just as broken as it sounds. This worked on Neji at the end of the series, who at this point is basically a god. That means it would have worked on Fate, Raken, Dynamis, and anyone under them. I mean, probably not the Life Maker, because she's actually God, but we don't have any examples of it not working, so we don't know what its exact limits are. Before we continue, I want to take a quick break to talk about her Pactio card. I didn't do this for Seo, because even though she technically has an official Pactio card designed by Akamatsu, she never actually makes a Pactio in the manga, so I didn't really feel the need to discuss it. That's not the case for Yuuna. Let's take a look at her stats. First, the obvious. Her number is 2 because, duh, she's seat number 2. Her virtue is courage. This fits perfectly. Like I keep saying, she was an ordinary person who was just thrust into this world of magic and monsters, and she has no problem jumping into battle with these superpowered beings. You could say that she just has no fear, but I don't think that's the case. She knows how dangerous these things are, but she's still able to push her fear down far enough to do what she needs to do. That's pretty much the definition of bravery. Her astrological symbol is Mars, and that kind of makes sense too. In classical mythology, Mars is the god of war, and in astrology, Mars represents energy, action, and desire. It's associated with being aggressive, impulsive, and forceful. Action rather than reaction. That is Yuuna to a T. She always looks before she leaps. Hell, she followed Neji to the magic world. You can't get much more impulsive than that. Her color is yellow, which I thought was a little weird because she's not particularly associated with the color yellow. It's not like she's wearing it on the card or anything. But yellow can represent happiness and positive energy, which again is very Yuuna. Her direction is east, and while that isn't anywhere near as clear cut, from what I can gather, it seems to have similar connotations: positive thought, joy, etc. Lastly, her title is Strenuous Arcarius, energetic shooter, because she is that. Look, they can't all be Zen riddles, okay? Just one random side note, but according to the wiki, it's implied that her pistols, the Iris Tormentum, used to be her mother's. And I do think that that's a cool idea, but I couldn't find anything in the manga to support it. It would be really poetic, because Yuuna is so similar to her, and she's following in her footsteps. And I would be all for it if we had seen Yuko use a gun, even once. But we haven't seen her fight at all. I know this sounds hypocritical coming from me and all my shaky theories, but I just don't think there's any evidence for it. What do you guys think? Did the Iris Tormentum originally belong to Yuko, or was Yuuna the first one to possess them? Let me know your thoughts down below. When we get to the Gravekeeper's palace, that's when she really starts to put in work. And she wasn't even supposed to be fighting. She and all the other non-combatants were hidden safely in Kaede's cloak. But then Dynamis was like, "Excuse me, this isn't Pokemon. You don't get to just sit in the box and let the starters do all the work." He ejects them from the cloak and drops them right in the middle of the battle. Neji, of course, rushes in to save them. But they surprise everyone by not only managing to fight back, but even managing to save Neji at one point. Seriously, when Koyomi freezes time around him, Maki snatches her artifact to free him, and Yuuna is able to suppress Homura's abilities with that spirit canceling bullet I was talking about earlier. You could say that this was just a lucky shot, or that they were underestimating them because they didn't consider them a threat. But that can't really be said when they come back for round 2. Now that they know that they can actually fight, they should be coming at them with full force. And to be totally fair to Fate's harem, before they attack, Akko injected them all with a magic drug that multiplies all their physical abilities. But it doesn't just arbitrarily increase their power, it multiplies it. So if Yuuna was super weak to begin with, the drug wouldn't have done that much. And after she takes it, she accomplishes some pretty amazing stuff. She was able to react to Koyomi when she was charging at full speed in her beast form, and shot her down before she could reach Akko. It's not like Koyomi is one of the strongest characters in the series or anything, but she says verbatim that an ordinary person would not be able to keep up with her speed in beast form. Keep in mind, Yuuna was a regular middle school girl like a month ago. During their final plan at the altar, she really goes ham. First, she shoots Shirabe right in the head and takes her out immediately. Granted, they couldn't see her coming, but she still hit the middle of her forehead in one shot. If you don't think that's impressive, right after that, Fate fires a bunch of mini petrification darts at them. The first 3 hit Beatrice and petrify her. Once she sees that, her brain jumps into high gear, and she sees all the darts in slow motion. Again, she is only able to do this because of Akko's drug, but I still don't think she could have pulled it off if she just had terrible reflexes to begin with. She then proceeds to shoot down all of the projectiles except 2 of them, before she runs out of ammo. Then, without any ammo, she blocks the dart headed for Maki with her bare hand and gets petrified herself. Let me break this down for anyone who doesn't understand how insane this is. First of all, shooting down all the darts. Think about how difficult it would be to shoot a dart out of the air. It would be borderline impossible. Now imagine it's a magic dart. And not just any magic, Fate's magic. Unlike Koyomi, Fate is one of the strongest characters in the series. And it's not just 1 or 2 either. I counted. There were 23. She shot down 21 magic darts, and she would have definitely got the other 2 if she didn't run out of bullets. Obviously, this doesn't mean that Yuuna could actually take Fate in a fight. It's not like that's his strongest spell or anything. But the point is, he was trying to petrify everyone, and he couldn't. He only got 3. And the fact that he was able to stop Fate from doing anything is nothing short of incredible. Then, when she was all out of ammo, she doesn't even hesitate to sacrifice herself to save her friend. I wonder if it was an intentional choice for it to be Maki, because it's already been established that they're best friends. It's probably a coincidence. I'm sure she would have done the same for any of her friends, but she might have hesitated for a second. For Maki, she jumps in immediately. Sorry, Seiya, but the real MVP of this battle is Yuuna. When they get back to Mahora, she participates in the Students vs. Teachers scavenger hunt and the Athletics Festival. And I wish we could end on a high note, but Yuuna doesn't come out of this arc looking great. Basically, the whole premise of the arc is the whole class attacking Neji and trying to force him to reveal who she's in love with. I think most of us could agree this is just not cool. Everyone is entitled to their own private feelings, and it is completely unfair for them to take that away from him. They claim that it's payback for, quote, stealing the lips of 18 girls and disregarding their feelings, but this is completely untrue. All of his pact deals were consensual. He's never forced himself on anyone, and he always puts their feelings first. He makes sure to let them down gently and maintain a friendship with them. But apparently that's not good enough. He's not allowed any secrets. If he likes someone, he has to tell everyone. Because they're planning on broadcasting it to the entire class. So, yeah, a lot of the girls are really unlikable in this arc. Which is a shame, because I actually really like the idea of Neji going up against his students in a lighthearted game like this. It could be a lot of fun, and it would be a much needed break after the chaos that was the Magic World arc. But the motivation is so out of character, Look, I don't want to rant on and on about this one point. That's not what this video is supposed to be about. But Yuuna is acting against Neji here, and I just want to understand why. After rereading it and letting it sit with me for a bit, the only conclusion I can come to is the tone. This is not a serious arc. No one's lives are at stake. They're just having fun. Even though I personally think that forcibly revealing someone's feelings when they're not ready to share them is pretty serious. They don't see it that way. It's just a game to them. When you think about it that way, it is kind of in character for Yuuna. She's always been a bit of a prankster, and charges into things without thinking about the consequences. This was just a prank gone too far. In other words, even though she did a bad thing, I don't think she had any bad intentions behind it. The only other explanation is that she just woke up one day and said, I'm gonna be a jerk to this person I really care about and respect. And when you're reading it, it certainly does seem that way. But personally, I choose to believe the former. But that brings us to the epilogue. And unlike Seo, Yuna's epilogue is rather simple. She becomes a Megalomasembria agent, just like her mother. It is a little vague what exactly that entails, but I think it's supposed to be the equivalent of the CIA or FBI. We don't know what kind of assignments she goes on, just that they take her all over the world, and give her lots of chances to see her old classmates again. What I thought was interesting was that it was apparently her mother's last wish, which kinda had me scratching my head because it clearly wasn't. At least, not from what we saw. There wasn't really anything I found that implied that Yuko wanted her to become an agent. If she did, you'd think that her dad would have taught her magic when she was little, but she was raised completely ignorant of it. I'm probably reading too much into it, but I don't know, maybe there's something we're missing here. Maybe if the manga hadn't gotten cancelled prematurely, it would have been revealed that her mother did want her to be an agent, but she passed away before she could start training her. Or that her dad refused to honor her last wish because he was still grieving. Or am I just doing that thing where I insert my own headcanon into the story again? Sorry, my bad. We do see her again, very briefly in UQ Holder, but we don't really learn anything new. Just like we learned in the epilogue, she's still a Megalomasembrian agent, and still makes time to see her friends. She actually gives them some very important intel on the Life Maker, so she continues to be MVP. I know this is technically a different timeline, but she's in the exact same position, so I think it's implied Yuuna was always going to end up here. And it's kind of cool to see that she turned out okay. She's well into her 30s, and she seems to be doing pretty well for herself. She has a good job that she seems to legitimately enjoy. She maintains healthy relationships with all her friends, and even contributes to their world-saving adventures. I don't know, I'm weirdly happy for her. And that's where Yuna's story ends. Her defining characteristic is definitely her cheerfulness and positivity. It's easy to look at her as a bit of an airhead without a care in the world, but she actually does have a significant amount of hardship in her life. That positive energy is what she uses to pull herself through it, and I gotta respect that. But that's it for this discussion. Don't forget to leave a like on the video before you go, and subscribe if you don't want to miss the next one. That's all for now. Keep being awesome, and I'll see you all next time.